From fear of sharks to 7 national freediving records, Kenyan coral reefs, and women's empowerment, today's chat might just rewire the way that youth enter the ocean.
Thank you so much for joining me on the very first episode of Warm Breath Conversations Below the Surface, a podcast exploring the powerful connection between the ocean, creativity, embodiment, well-being, and community. This podcast was born from my own journey as a surfer, freediver, photographer, and mother. I've experienced the undeniable pull of the ocean and wanted to create a space for conversations with other ocean lovers, artists, thinkers, scientists, and everyday adventurers. Together, we'll explore how the ocean shapes our life more aligned. So my very first guest today is Argentinian freediver Luciana Blanco Villegas, champion of 7 national freediving records, freediving instructor, and conservationist.
Yes, thanks for the introduction, Katie.
I'd love to start with exploring your connection to the ocean, where it began and what it means to you now.
Yeah. Well, my connection to the ocean, I think it began when I was about 2. And a big wave came and it took me and all my stuff, including like a massive blue towel that I was sitting on. And after that, every single time my dad tried to get in the ocean, I would cry like my lungs out until he would like, okay, fine, come out. So my first interactions with the ocean was like of complete fear. And, like in a holiday to Polynesia ages ago, it was the first time that I was swimming in warm waters and no one could just take me out of the water. And when 7 years ago I moved to Sydney, all I wanted to do was move somewhere where I could surf and learn how to do it and stand on the board and maybe be good at it one day. And I was just so terrified of the sharks that I barely went in. But I found this group, Bold and Beautiful, that did open water swims. And I figured that if I could go in with them, my chances of getting eaten by a shark would be reduced drastically because they were a massive group back then. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this out and maybe see if I can get used to seeing the sharks. And when I say sharks, I'm talking about pork jacksons and crested horns, those sharks that don't even have teeth. But still, I was terrified. And I started swimming with these people every single day, 7 a.m., winter, summer. I was there and I started just loving it so much that I kind of forgot about surfing. That was my new thing, swimming with these people in Manly. I think it was like around 1.5 kilometers every day. It was like, the thing that made my day. And yeah, the winter came and these small sharks that actually look a bit more like sharks started coming, the dusky whalers. And, I was fine. Like, okay, this could be a thing. And I started swimming with these 2 friends. And they were trying to teach me technique because I was just like, going on pure strength, no technique whatsoever. And one of those days, this guy, Mark, says, hey, I have a surprise for you today. And I'm like, what? I do not like surprises in the water. And he's like, yeah, come. There's like 2 gray nurse sharks in the bay. And I was like, okay, how big? Oh, just like 2-3 meters. I'm like, I'll see you later. This is not for me. And I don't even know how they convinced me to go in with them. Yeah, and we swam out. There was a group of people staring down, and there was like these 2 sharks, sort of like in a yin and yang shape, one next to the other, sort of like floating in a trance, just beautifully, peacefully. And it wasn't very scary because they would have been like around 6-7 meters deep. So it didn't look big. And then Mark, the swimming coach, is going down, breaststroking down, and is right next to it. And I'm like, oh, wow, it does look big now. They were like the same size. And then Mark comes up and I was like, oh, I want to do that. And I start trying to breaststroke down, and then I like feel my ears are exploding and I couldn't hold my breath. And I was like, going up, but like, excited. Instead of scared, it was just exciting. And yeah, and we tried a few more times until like, okay, it was time to swim. And I was actually disappointed. I'm like, no, I want to stay with the sharks a little more. And I was very surprised by this reaction. In the past, whenever I went swimming or taking photos with someone underwater, I was like, do not tell me if there's a shark, otherwise I'll just like swim back to shore as fast as I can. You'll never see me again. And after the swim, I went back home. I called a friend that she always said she was like obsessed with sharks. She worked at the dive shop. in Manly. And I'm like, you need to go. There's like 2 sharks. Like, now I understand how you see it at school, and it's not scary and it's fun. And later that day, she showed me some photos of her GoPro with her swimming with these sharks. And I was like, where's your tank? What? And she's like, no, I'm a freediver. And I'm like, okay, what's that? and she explained. And as soon as she did, I was hooked. So I brainwashed 7 of my friends and organized a course for like 2 or 3 weeks from that moment. And we did it. And it was just life-changing. Every single day, I'd go out to the bay and swim and freedive. COVID had just hit, like maybe a week after I finished the course. So everyone had time. And, I started going down with a friend that had a big camera, and he was obsessed with a cuttlefish that was hiding under a rock. And I remember that first day we went out, and he's like, come see. And I'm like trying to go down, but my ears are exploding, can't really equalize. So I don't reach it. But then I see the photos of the cuttlefish on his camera, and I was like, wow, that's super cool. And then we'd swim around the bay, and there was a sunken motorcycle, and there were some swim throughs, and there was like always these beautiful fish around, and it was just so fun. And every day like that, every single day, this friend of mine would call me, and I'm like, 5 minutes, I'll be in the bay, and I'm like, rushing down because I only lived 2 minutes from there. I was very, very lucky. And, one day I could actually reach the cuttlefish and look under the rock and see what was there. I still couldn't really equalize properly. Had to like turn around and equalize my ears, and then start going down again, and then turn around again and equalize my ears, and then fin down again. But until I could finally do it and feel confident enough to hold my breath for a little longer, right? And I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. This is what I want to do. But it didn't come without rocks on the way that I stumbled with, because, I couldn't equalize my ears, not even if my life depended on it. When you freedive, usually, during a course or when you're line training, you have a buoy on the surface, and then there's a line that goes straight down, weighted by some lead or some bottom weight. And, you go head first, and you fin down or you pull down the line, and it makes it harder to equalize if you don't know the correct technique. When you're scuba diving, you are upright usually, so you can use any technique, and the air will kind of flow from your lungs into your ears, because that's the way it goes, right? But if you're upside down, the air just wants to go down, doesn't want to come out to your ears, so you can only equalize to a certain point. And I always tell my students that I had to go 35 meters feet first, like pulling this, before I could even go 7 meters head first. And and it took me forever. And so much frustration, so much, just like wanting it so bad. And you're like, you don't even know why I wanted it so bad. I just needed it. And well, finally, after years and years and a lot of exercises and a lot of just like tuning in and like, feeling those tiny muscles in your ears, in your throat, in your larynx, how does everything works, and a lot of focus, I could finally learn how to equalize. And after that, I was able to become an instructor, and and just do what I enjoy the most now, which is teaching, competing, training, and sharing my ocean story.
I love so many aspects of your story. I love that it's so relatable. I feel like I didn't start freediving until later in life. I was kind of similar. I started with the surfing. I was always on top of the water. And it's funny, I also used to live in the northern beaches as well. And I spent so much time on top of the water, and I just missed everything that was underneath. And I was probably a little bit afraid, but, obviously just don't think about it. And then your journey from sort of fear into what you do now, I feel like it's so inspiring and so attainable. And also how you touched on that transformation from fear of the marine life and what you might encounter to a fascination and an inspiration. And I love how now you are not just working as a freediver, you're working in a conservation as well, aren't you? Doing some coral restoration in
Yeah, because
Kenya?
there's so much fear of the unknown. If we stay on the surface or on the board, we don't even really look at whatever's down there. And if you can't really see it, it's scary, right? it's scary, but once you open your eyes and you see the beauty in it, you see their behavior, you see the sharks are really not interested in us. They're just there. They just live there. Yeah. And then you start, like opening a lot more of little boxes and finding out about how they're so important for the reef, how they're so important for marine life, how they're so important for the earth in general. And yes, and it's also a thing where you meet a lot of really cool people, like how I met you, how I met one of my students, Chris, that invited me to join him in his restoration project. He works for an NGO that's called Revolution. And Revolution does coral conservation in Kenya and in Curaçao in the Caribbean. And he was telling me, when we were chatting on the buoy after a session, how hard it was for them to get funding because, coral restoration, they haven't really gotten to that stage where they can do something to finance their own activities. So they always depend on external sources of income so they can do their programs. And it was such a beautiful project in Kenya, empowering for women and young men, because it's one of those societies where it's a bit frowned upon for women to work, and especially to work in something physical. But they get these young women from very small villages, and they teach them how to scuba dive, and they teach them how to work, and their families are not always on the same page. They don't really like that, but I don't know, I guess they just do it anyways. And they feel so happy, to be able to earn their own income, to be in control of their lives. And it's such a precious thing in those small villages in Kenya. And yeah, and coming back to their problem, that was the funding. He was telling me that 1 hour of a scuba tank costed more or less the same as 2.5 days of someone's wage. Just 1 hour on scuba. So I was like, wait, and like how deep are the structures? How deep do they have to work? And he told me that about 90% of the structures were between 5 and 7 meters of depth. So I was like, what? Let's just teach them how to free dive, so then you don't need as much funding, and then you can funnel the funding into more structures or
Wow.
personnel or something else, instead of giving it to the dive shop, that's probably owned by a French person, And yeah, so I grabbed a bunch of my friends, and we went to Kenya with Chris, and we taught 25 reef rangers how to free dive. Of those, 15 passed the course, and 2 of them passed the level 2, so they could even dive to 30 meters. And yeah, and they were thrilled, and we were thrilled, and especially because, firstly, because they can do everything without a scuba tank, without depending on that external source, but also because now they can rely on their own bodies and know a lot more things about safety to keep them safe when they're doing their jobs.
I feel like that story is such a testament to the transformative power of the ocean and a sense of community, which is like what this podcast is about. What you were just talking about the empowerment of women, how cultures and people are connecting from all these different parts of the world to better the environment. Like, it's not just, yes, people free dive for sport. And I'd like to talk about that sort of personal growth and development, but this learning to free dive for the purpose of bettering the environment, and that sharing of skills is just so powerful.
Yeah. And it's something that they can teach each other, Our goal for next year is to go back and try and train 2 or 3 reef rangers, the most promising one, to be an instructor, a freediving instructor. So then they would be completely independent, They could just create their own instructors, start their own freedivers, and keep up the project without the need of scuba tanks. Of course, it can't be completely removed, but I think it could be reduced about 70% in their activities.
But that's incredible. And also, again, sort of just going back to what you were saying about how with the females in the community, it's sort of frowned upon or not encouraged, that they seek that sort of independence and, go out and do that. Again, it's something that I've really noticed in my freediving journey, that the ocean is such a great leveler. It's such a, it brings people together, and it really removes barriers. It removes the, male, female,
Mhm.
I just, yeah, it's just so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. In
That's,
competitive freediving, there used to be a huge gap between in the world records between female and men, but that has been reduced very, very drastically in the last couple of years. I think there's only like about 10 meters of difference
yeah,
between
wow.
the men and the women's world record holders.
And would you say, I mean, you're obviously competing at a really high level, but I feel as though there are so many freedivers that start in a similar way to you and I, that sort of, start off exploring the ocean, and then, want to be able to spend more time in the ocean, want to be able to dive deeper, want to have marine life encounters, want to be safer, whatever the reason is that they sort of start their journey, that often the pull that keeps them going is not I mean, I know that people do get fixated on numbers in freediving, but I feel like for a lot of people, and I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like a lot of people, the pull is something else. It's something else that we get from being in the ocean, that I don't know if you've been following my journey. I think my children are autistic, and I just found out that I'm neurodiverse as well. And the ocean's the only place ever that my mind is quiet. And that solitude, and that, I don't know, it's almost like connecting to something, spiritual and higher
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
being at one in nature.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed is that the more that I free dive, the less that I do yoga. I
Yes.
think it's very related, because whatever you can get in one of those practices, it's just so similar to what you get when you're freediving. It's complete mindfulness. You have to be like completely
Yeah.
focused on what you're doing and present. And your mind doesn't wander. It's there, present with you. You want it or not. I think in my entire life, I only had just one dive where I wasn't focused, and it's just allowing you a level of presence and mindfulness that you wouldn't get from a lot of things. And I also, like, when people ask me, like, why do you like that dancing tango? Why do you like surfing? Why do you like freediving? And I come back to like, oh, it's actually the same answer, because you're just completely present. You have to feel everything. You have to like be really tuned in with yourself and with whomever is with you to be able to do that activity. And that is pretty beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And just sort of following on from that and touching on sort of the initial stages of your journey, the equalization, the learning phase. I feel like, again, the ocean, as a surfer, as a freediver, it teaches you so many lessons in like life lessons, life skills. And I feel like I really struggle with equalization head down. I would quite happily just shimmy down the line. And I've been watching your training videos to try and help. But yeah, that sort of, I guess it teaches you patience and perseverance,
Yeah.
and I guess a sense of trust maybe in your own body, and everything sort of, um, it's things don't necessarily come easy, but it teaches you the value of what you put in. You're rewarded tenfold with the experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Freediving is definitely one of those sports that teaches you what you need. Like for
Yeah,
me, it was mostly to slow down. It's not a
yeah,
sport that you can push and push and push. If you push, you get hurt, and as a consequence, you need to spend 3 months out of the water, or 2 weeks out of the water, or whatever. And it's one of those sports that you need to soften into and respect what your body is telling you. And if you actually like it and you actually want to go deeper, or expand your breath hold, you need to nurture yourself, not be too hard, and just take it slow. Otherwise you just end up by traumatizing your body and not wanting the experience. And this is a lesson that I have to be taught by diving over and over and over and over and over again. You know, like I recently had a surgery, so I had to stay out of the water 2 months. Before that, I was in Argentina for 3 months. Before that, I was, doing something else. long story short, I haven't been diving deep in the last 18 months. But of course, it's my first day out in the water. After all this, after the surgery, after 18 months of not going deep, and I want to hit 45 meters, like at least, like that's the benchmark, because every time I came back, the first day was 45 meters. Yeah. I had been teaching, I had been going to 10 to 30 meters, like very often. And of course, I came back to the water and I did a 20-meter dive and I was like, oh my God, that felt like so much, but keep on going, 25, 30, 35, 45. And I'm like, oh, wow, I hate the sport. I never want to do this again. Why do I do this to myself? No, this is not for me. This is not for me. Instead of like waiting for a second and saying, you know what, it's my first day, I might as well just enjoy the ride and see where I want to, where my body wants to allow me to go. I just push for it. I just need to face it. I'm just going to have to keep on learning this until it's just ingrained into my brain.
I feel like it would be so hard for any athlete who trains at such a high level to be out of training, to be out of competing because of injury. I feel like the mental pressure, as well as the physical ailments and the physical recovery, that sort of mental strength would be so hard, I can imagine.
Yeah, but it's also a sport that it has so many sides of it, It's like, of course, it's physical. If you're going for deeper dives, you need to be strong in your arms, in your legs, in your core. But you also need to train your breath hold, because you want to be able to hold your breath for at least 4 or 5 minutes, not moving in order to be moving at a fast speed and working against pressure and gravity to sustain you. You want to be working on technique. You need to be working on equalization. If you're dry out of the water, you need to be working on the dry equalization. So it's just so many different things that have to fit into your training schedule, and it's very complex. But the base of all of it is just mental training.
I think, I mean, I would love for you to talk on that sort of, I feel, again, on my journey in freediving, something that struck me right from the very beginning, learning about apnea, learning about the impact of submersion in water on our bodies, it blew me away that what happens to our bodies, that we have that physiological, like the mammalian dive reflex. And I found that my reaction was like, gosh, why doesn't everybody learn this as a tool for life? Because I feel like just being able to override, obviously you're training at a very high level, and all of the things that you just spoke about, it's to achieve those depth goals and with the amount of dives that you do. But I feel like freediving, or certainly learning about the apnea, is something that everyone can benefit from.
Yeah, and it's truly fascinating to know how much the body does for us without us even knowing in the water. We were definitely built for being underwater. And it's just something that you train, and sure, use it or lose it, but then the body remembers and it can just jump right back into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually, I don't know if you saw, I posted a story on my Instagram this morning. I was in my local library, and there was a seniors newspaper. On the front page of the newspaper, it looked as though it might have been, isn't there like the underwater statues? Is it in Lombok? Or I think it's somewhere out.
Yes, in Lombok, in Gili.
It looked like an image from there. And it was seniors, 70-year-olds freediving, and they likened it to Tai Chi. And I just thought, how fantastic is that? It is, talking about the levels that you're training at, but it is an accessible sport.
Oh, for sure. And also, it's not one of those things that you get older and you can't start. I started diving when I was 30 years old. And because as you grow older, your heart rate starts dropping down and your metabolism starts dropping down. You're consuming less oxygen. So, if you're 50, you're going to consume less oxygen than if you're 20. So you're probably going to be able to hold your breath for longer. And also is that mental strength that you gain with age.
Yeah.
That is a very, very big part of the game. But even if you're not competitive freediving, just if you want to explore the depths. When I first was thinking of starting, I remember I was telling a friend that I usually swam with, and he was like, "Do you have a death wish? Why do you want to learn how to freedive?" And I was like, "What? I just want to get to the bottom of Manly Beach. It's 7 meters." And I would never have thought that I wanted to pursue deeper depth after than that. But it's just so, it's a bit of addictive, It's beautiful. It's beautiful to be able to feel at ease doing something that could be hard, you know? And that's also the other part about reframing everything. Because I used to be scared of pursuing new depths. Not, I don't know if scared is a word, but I was like having a lot of pressure. Because the line is set to a certain depth and you're like, holy, I need to go like down 56 meters. And what if I don't make it? Like, what's my coach going to say? What are my friends going to say? I said that on this trip I wanted to achieve a certain depth and I am not there yet. And it's my last dive. What if I can't make it? And instead of making everything like that, like just feeling like a ball of pressure, with the help of my coach, I started reframing that completely differently. And now I'm like, doing my breathe up and kind of like smiling and saying to myself, you know what? I have this beautiful opportunity to enjoy this and see where it can take me. Like, no pressure. It's just a drill. Let's see where I can go. And reframing that just takes so much pressure off. Just makes everything seem so smooth and a lot more beautiful and a lot more enjoyable. And that's the whole reason why we freed out, right? Either on the line or with the sharks or whatever. It's just enjoyment. It shouldn't be any other way.
I feel like that kind of attitude and that kind of training that you have been going through would help you in your instructing as well, because you work as an instructor in freediving retreats and schools. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, definitely. Yes. You can see when your students are excited or when they're just scared, or sometimes they're going with their partners, and especially men, when their female partners are doing well, they're like, oh my God, I need to beat that. You know? Or when there are groups of friends, sometimes like, they're usually everyone's really encouraging, but there's those moments of like slight competition that you just want to separate those things. Because it's not about how the other person's going, it's how about you're going. And maybe you have a blockage, in the beginning, but afterwards you're just gonna fly past the line and go past all those obstacles, or maybe the obstacles you find them later on. And that's part of everyone's journey.
And I wonder, with some of the journey that you shared, that has also helped you with your instructing, because you've struggled with equalization, you struggled with fear of sharks and depth.
Yes. Well, the equalizing, I like to tell my students that if I could learn how to equalize, I'm pretty sure anyone in the world can. Because my teacher, I don't know how many years he's been teaching for, at least 15 years. And he's like, Lou, you're like the hardest case of equalization that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I believe him. So if I could make it, anyone can do it. It's just how bad you want it, how much you're willing to work for it. And 50% of the population are just super lucky and they can just do it naturally. The other half have to work a little bit harder. I think I'd be like in that 1% where they have to work hardest. But with some proper guidance, it can be achieved. And that's why I recorded that online course that you were referring to, because those were the things that helped me break through and understand how everything inside my oral cavity works, how my tongue has to move, how my larynx has to move, how my vocal cords have to move in order to be able to move that air from the mouth into the ears.
See, I think that's what I love about your story. It's just so inspiring to know how hard you struggled to now be, a national freediving record holder. Just, yeah, it's really inspiring. And you just touched on something like learning about I guess the biology, the physiology of what happens in freediving. That again is something that I have found really interesting. And, working as a photographer underwater, I didn't have that knowledge when I started. And I feel like it's so important, access to that kind of information for people who are spending time in water. I feel like having the knowledge obviously just makes for safer experiences, even for people who are not diving at the same depths as you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, forget the depths. It's just about the experience. But also I feel like the amount of time that you spend in the water is so important. Surface, a meter down, 100 meters down, doesn't matter. Just spending that time and being super comfortable in those environments is what does the trick.
You are listening to One Breath, Conversations Below the Surface with me, Katie Jackson. If you're loving our Blue Mind content, please consider subscribing to the show and sharing it with your ocean-loving friends. I feel like you and I are probably quite lucky in the environment that we've been able to learn in Cabbage Tree Bay. Again, it blows my mind that I didn't spend more time underwater when I was living there, but there's so much, and I found myself driving back down there, even though I don't live there anymore, but there's so much marine life. And again, I feel, I think you and I both had a similar fear of what lies beneath, but then sort of as you're exploring more and you have more time in the ocean, it turns into this fascination. And I feel like, going back to what you were saying about the coral restoration, it's sort of, I feel like it empowers people and inspires people to want to take notice of conservation. It wants to, they sort of take more interest in what's going on in their backyard, more
Yeah.
interest in what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, people want to protect what they love. And if they don't know something, they cannot love it. And freediving and scuba diving and open water swimming, they're just all things that make you come closer to the ocean if that's where you're practicing, right? And yeah, it makes you love it. And when you love it, you want to protect it. And of course, you need knowledge, right? There's this whole problem, let's say, about this father and surfer that died in DY, and people are questioning the shark nets. But the shark nets would probably have not done anything to prevent that. More the other way. And there's so much ignorance on the topics, on sharks, on their behavior, on what that didn't go hunting for the person. Probably went down hunting for something that was caught in a shark net. And the fact that freediving has, exploded in the way that it has in the last few years will really help us be more aware of these things, get people more informed, and hopefully, remove these harmful things for the environment and that don't help protect the population.
I agree. I feel so passionately about it. I know you're joining me from Bali at the moment, so you probably you would have seen some of the media online from what happened. I mean, like obviously you and I spent a lot of time in the ocean on the northern beaches. I actually used to surf our spots before I had the kids on my own regularly. I mean, of course, I feel like as ocean goers, it's always in our mind, the risk, but as is, when you get in a car and drive, there's a risk in everything that we do. And I think you're right. The more time people are spending in the water, the more we're learning about animal behavior, the louder our voices. Science is obviously improving. What was very interesting, you may not have seen on Channel 10 News last night, there was a journalist and a diver who actually dived the shark nets and took videos to show people, that stretch of beach. I think they said it was about 2 kilometers long, and they showed the nets. It's 150 meters long, and they showed the divers above and below. And I think it was a really great visual representation, because a lot of the conversations that I'm seeing online from the general public who don't spend so much time in the ocean, they seem to think that these nets enclose the beach, and somehow that shark was caught inside the net, whereas the science is saying that the bycatch caught in the nets, is what's drawing the predators in.
Yes, exactly. You find a lot more dead animals in the inside of the nets than in the outside when they're actually trying to get out.
Yeah.
The first time I saw the shark nets was one day that I randomly decided I was going to swim from Shelly Beach to freshwater.
Oh, wow.
And I had
That's a big distance.
I had a friend that I asked her to go on a kayak next to me because I was, a little scared. And I think it was 3 of us swimming and her on the kayak. And, we're swimming there. It's been like, I don't know, probably like half an hour, 40 minutes. And she's like, guys, guys, guys. And I'm like, where's the great white shark? Why is she yelling? And I put my head up and she's like, we're outside of the shark nets. And I'm like, what? And I look and I see the shark nets that are like significantly under the surface. And it was great visibility that day. And I stick head down and I see, I can see the ends of it. And I'm like, this is the shark nets? Okay, cool. And kept on swimming. That's definitely not going to keep us safer.
But I wonder, you and I we weren't born in Australia, neither of us. And I came to Australia when I was 29. And I think the first day that I arrived, I went and bought a surfboard off Gumtree. I went paddled straight out at North Stain. And, I heard about shark nets. I saw the buoys like out in the ocean, and naively probably thought the same, that,
Oh,
that
for
a beach
sure.
was somehow, almost like the enclosures, the swimming enclosures that you get in the harbour, where it's sort of,
For
attached
sure,
to the
because
ground.
I don't think we tend to question the things that make us feel safe for, oh, this is a shark net, fun, great, I can surf now. If it was on the contrary, if they would be like, no, you cannot surf because there are not shark nets, you would probably like look into that deeper because you're not being able to do something that you want. But I don't think we question that much the things that allow us to do the things that we want to do.
That's why I think, people, like, I feel a strong responsibility because I earn a living from the ocean to, I guess, share that information, to
Hmm.
take interest, and I guess maybe challenge the misinformation.
Yeah.
And I think that we have, that, it's another important role that we have as ocean people.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the last a few years since I started freediving, even before I learned how to equalize, I've been to such beautiful places and swam with so many different types of sharks. I've seen hammerheads, white tips, black tips,
Wow.
massive lemon sharks that are also like little doggies. They don't do anything even though they're massive. Spinner sharks. I even swam with bull sharks, not on purpose. And I saw a great white shark once on Lady Island, also not on purpose.
Wow.
And then I went to the Maldives to swim with tiger sharks, and I wasn't like da 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 da. I was a bit scared. Like my heart was racing the first time we did the immersion. There were like tiger sharks everywhere. I was like, oh my god. But then it takes a couple dives just to get used to it and to see how they behave and to see that they're really just interested in the tuna heads, not in ours. And they're not these vicious creatures that just will like go and grab you by the foot and eat you alive. They don't have hands, like all they can do to be curious and see, okay, what's going on, what's this creature, is go and like get a little nib out of you, but not in a voracious and savage way, more in a curious way. And if you are with people that know how to manage them, you will be safe. Of course, if you're in a surfboard, is not that safe because they feel like you're a seal or a turtle or an animal. But that's why we also need better mitigation services in places like Australia, not shark nets, maybe drones or something that can look out, that does not actually lure them in.
I agree. And maybe education about shark behavior, because I know the person that was bitten heroically was trying to get his, other people in the water to sort of band together. And I have heard that before, that for surfers, it's safer to sort of band together and try and get in. But then obviously I also hear a lot of information that as freedivers and surfers, pretty much the worst thing that you can do is paddle away, because that triggers the shark's predatory instincts. But of course, a natural human reaction would be to
Yeah.
swim away as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you fast and you kick the water very fast, you produce a lot of bubbles. And the shark will think, oh, that's like, a hurt animal. It's an easy feed. And tries it out. Because also they don't have that great of a vision, the sharks. So they'll, just try what's out there with all the overfishing happening. Of course they're
Yeah.
gonna try it and get an easy meal. But yeah, I once was in Byron getting ready for surfing, and we saw whales with some friends, and I like ditched my surfboard out, borrowed some fins very very quickly, and went out to swim to what looked not very far away. It ended up being really really far away, and I was lucky enough to see the whale passing with a baby pretty close to me, and then I was like looked to land pretty far away. I was tired, so I decided to wait for a little bit, see what's around, catch my breath, and I see a big shark. And the day before, I had listened to an Ocean Ramsey podcast about how to act when there's a shark around, and I was like, okay, great, I've heard this yesterday. Let's put it in practice. So I turned around and very slowly started like going back to land, always looking behind my shoulder, like every 2 or 3 strokes, like looking back, because that's predatory behavior. So they're like, oh, they're hunting too. Maybe I won't eat them. Oh yeah.
Was that off the pass, Byron?
Water goes, yeah.
Because you see, I think this is another important bit of information that's missing amongst public, I guess, debates and conversations. Like I was up in Byron at the beginning of the year and I actually put my drone up on off Water Goes
Yeah.
in the afternoon, and it blew my mind the amount of wildlife that is literally just off the beach there, because I put the drone up off the pads and also Water Goes. So it would have been about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. It was before I had to get the kids home, and the water was incredible. There were surfers out. There were sharks. I could not tell what species it was, other than it was definitely not a leopard shark. If I had to guess, maybe some kind, like maybe a bronze whaler or something. But I mean, 10, 11, 12, like more sharks than I could count.
Yeah.
All off Water Goes. And I think when you consider that, how close encounters we have regularly that we probably don't know about, because of course when you're swimming and surfing, most of the time you're just not going to see.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
And the sharks aren't interested generally in
Yeah, they generally just try to go away as fast as they can.
Yeah. So what lessons has the ocean taught you that you feel like you would like to share with others?
Mostly patience and pace. It keeps on pacing me, trying to slow me down, not just charge for the end goal, just trying to enjoy the journey. And that's been me the last 3 weeks, I would say, from getting back after 18 months, completely hating every second of it, to leaving an open line and just telling myself I'll turn around and come back to the surface whenever I feel like it. Whenever I stop enjoying it, it's time to come up. And incredibly, like that stopping of chasing numbers, that stop of having any sort of expectations just makes everything so much more enjoyable.
And do you think, I mean, I think we touched on this already, but you sort of that skill that you've learned, has it transferred into your life?
I would like to think so. But I feel like the ocean tries to teach me the things that are not in my nature,
Yeah.
So I probably have to, actively pace myself and slow down, and instead of like charging through things and everything. But it's definitely a great teacher, and I think I can apply those lessons for many, many things.
I feel like I can relate to that.
Yeah, like the breathing, the calming down, the reframing of circumstances, instead of like thinking, oh, this is working against me, just thinking, okay, how can I work with this obstacle? How can I go around it without harming myself? How can I reframe this thing that I don't want to do so it becomes something that I might be curious about?
And are you spending a lot of time back in the pool training as well, or are you just out in the ocean?
I was, but only because I couldn't get into the ocean after I had the surgery. The doctor said that I couldn't go back to the ocean between 2 to 3 months, but I could go back to the pool after 6 weeks. So I had a few weeks that I only did pool. That's why I ended up creating a pool competition. Reframing. I can do pool great. I'll just do a pool competition. But I do think pool is an important component for anyone that's learning how to dive, because also not everyone has the ocean available. And to be able to be comfortable in the ocean, it's important to spend time in the water, even if it has chlorine. It helps improve technique. It helps with carbon dioxide tolerance, which is actually also really good for your health. I do recommend people to do pool if they don't have the ocean around. In particular, for myself, now that I'm in Bali, I probably would not go to the pool very much, because I would like to spend as much time as I can in the ocean. And afterwards, when I don't have that available, I would go back to the pool.
I feel like even I can relate again on my journey, learning how to fin properly, even buoyancy. I remember the first time that I was actually, doing some apnea practice, deliberate kind of practice, trying to sort of keep a line in the pool was actually really so much harder than what I had anticipated.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of proprioception of your body, how you float,
Yeah.
how you move. Because, you're using a wetsuit, you're using weights, everything's a bit chunky and weird and clunky. So yeah, just spending hours in the pool will definitely help anyone in their freediving journey, especially to practice those things, breath holding technique and carbon dioxide tolerance. It's a great, great tool for it.
What has surprised you about your journey or relationship with the ocean?
What surprised me?
Uh-huh.
Well, everything surprised me. Like I lived in the city and in South America. My life was pretty, together. I had a corporate job. I had a great boyfriend that I was probably going to get married to and have children and be really unhappy in the process because I couldn't really find whatever was making me happy. I just sort of went with the flow of life as it was intended. And all of a sudden, I find myself living in Bali with these two beautiful rescue dogs that you're hearing on the background, and a beautiful partner that supports me and comes with me to these places, and I can finally find some sort of purpose in life that was what was missing. Probably my life is not very together because I'm like flying in and out, teaching, training, coaching. It's being everywhere and nowhere, but I feel it is full of purpose and connection and joy in an unorthodox way.
I feel like a couple of things sort of, post COVID, a lot of people are living and working more remotely now anyway. I feel like, that is sort of more acceptable. There are more opportunities for people to do that. But I feel like the ocean has really got that power. I know that when I was working in law, before I was working in law, I pretty much just chose my job around what allowed me to surf as much as possible and be around, while still maintaining some kind of orthodox life, while maintaining a relationship and a home and sort of living in one place. But then again, like I really relate to that pool of the ocean. It feels like I'm living a life more aligned by choosing to do the photography, choosing to connect with other ocean lovers. It's sort of, it's not that I guess maybe the material goals are less important, but I feel that life fulfillment, the freedom, and especially being the parent of neurodiverse children, learning how to work in a way that supports my brain,
Yes.
hopefully will be beneficial for them as well. When I grew up, it was sort of, you go to university or you go to trade, and if you don't do either of those, you go and get a job and you're out of the family home, you're on your own. Whereas, and it wasn't, I guess my parents were of a generation where there weren't those opportunities to travel and adventure, and maybe for women as well. But now I feel like we can inspire others by what we do.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I also chose the place where I was going to be living in Sydney, according to if it was 5 minutes walking from Cavern Bay or not. It couldn't be more than 5 minutes walking from there. Like that was a line. I lived everywhere around, like around that bay or in South Stain. But I had to be very, very close to Tapestry Bay to surf, to swim, and to dive.
Yeah. So like not far enough that carrying a surfboard, like you had to be able to like walk down to the beach with a surfboard.
Yes, yes. The best time of them all was when I lived in South Stain in front of the Life Saving Club. I literally crossed the road and went in.
Living the dream.
For a surf or for a swim or for a dive, everything was just there. So direct.
And does your partner, does he free dive?
He does not.
Oh, that's so interesting.
He has, but he's a surfer.
Yeah. It's still ocean.
Yes.
Ocean, like an ocean person.
Yes, he likes it, but he's not into depth like me. But
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. So then we can have more interests to share and talk about different things, not just about diving.
But then still, while equally understanding both of your respective passions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to talk any more about any of the projects that you're working on?
Maybe yes, maybe one. One of the projects that I'm working on with one of my best friends is a webpage that's actually called bookfreedivingretreats.com. Because as a host of many and teacher of many freediving retreats, you work so hard and you put your soul into it and to the location that has to be perfect, and and the food and the caterers and the activities and the wildlife. And then you have so many questions of, oh, do you have another date? No. Or can we do it on this other time? No. Do you have the same thing but in this other place? No. So we created a web page where hopefully everyone or anyone with a freediving school and instructor can post their freediving retreats. And then you, as a client, can choose the destination and the dates that work for you. And and hopefully one day will be like a very, very big database with all the freediving retreats and schools around the world. So you can book your retreat, but also if you're traveling somewhere, you can have a reference of what freediving schools are in the area, what things do they offer, if they offer, diving in a cenote or in a shipwreck, or if they offer caves, if they have showers, if they have a cafe and vegan food in their school, all those little things that you would like to know, but the information is not always available. And yes, that's a really exciting project that we're working on. And and it's already live.
Well, I was going to say, I actually had a look at the website and I think it's fantastic. I can fully, again, relate because my circumstances are such, having young children, I can't just up and leave and, take off. Like, I definitely, it's going to require some planning.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was really impressed to be able to see. I think you can look at budget, you can look at location, you can look at dates, you can look at like you were saying, like what wildlife you want to go and see, to have it, because as a consumer or a free diver, it can be quite overwhelming because you might follow certain schools, providers, like on social media or on their website, but it's like you say, it doesn't always work.
Yeah,
So
and you
to
can
have all of
and you can filter with all those things, if it's pet friendly, if it's child friendly,
yeah, I love
if it's
that.
only women's, maybe you just want to do a girls trip, if it's couples friendly, you have all the information listed there.
I think that's great. And it's going to work great for both clients and also, as you say, for providers, for companies that are doing that, to have that one hub. I think that's fantastic. I'll share the links in the program notes.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think we can sign off
Yes.
for today. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thanks for trusting me with your first podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for being my first guest.
You did
I
great.
feel like I could just talk to you for hours.
I feel the same about you.
Thank you for diving in with us. If this episode inspired you, I'd love it if you would follow or subscribe to the show and share it with someone who needs some Blue Mind inspiration. Next week's guest talks to us about how surfing impacted his life choices, big wave photography, and how one person launched an environmental conservation campaign with an outcome that can inspire us all. Thank you so much for listening.